Are you underpaid as a videographer? Today I'm going to show you how to fix that. When I first started in videography, I was an electrical engineer. Working at my job for 6 years, I started traveling back and forth to Atlanta to do videography gigs. I had picked up a camera, fell in love with it. It was 2020 and it was during a pandemic. Atlanta was wide open. Everybody else was shut down, but there was a lot of work happening in Atlanta. I met a guy there who changed my life. Okay, he became a client of mine. He became a friend of mine. And he started connecting me with a bunch of other people, a lot of influencers in the Atlanta area he was connecting me to. Stuff was starting to pick up a whole lot for me, so much so that I quit my job. I had left a pretty nice salary to come and do videography work. Some people have problems raising their prices. I had no problem raising my prices. However, other people had problems with me raising my prices. When they would ask me to do stuff, I would charge them what it would cost to do it. People seemed to have a problem with it. Not only did they have a problem with it, they seemed to stop talking to me or stop calling me to try to do gigs and stuff like that. That weighed heavy on me a little bit because I was still learning how to become an entrepreneur. It happened so many times that if somebody said like, hey, can you do such and such for me? I'd be like, it'll cost that much. He's like, can you do better than that? I'd be like, no, but I can do it for you for free. Because in my heart, I just couldn't reconcile dropping my prices for no apparent reason. I would also add that I had packages and I was not flexible at all with the packages. So that particular client that I was working with, he asked me how much would it cost for me to do the event. And I told him, it'll cost this much. He said that he could give me $1,000 less. I wasn't flexible with my packages. It was like you either getting the 1-day event package, the 2-day event package, the 3-day event package. Wasn't very flexible. And so I was like, well, this is the price. And he came up a little bit. Like he was really trying to meet me in the middle. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is another situation where somebody is not going to deal with me. He's somebody that I'm cool with. I'm about to actually lose a friend because I'm not discounting my prices to where he wants them to be. He ended up saying that I can't justify paying that much. In my head, I can't justify taking that little. And it wasn't a little he was trying to give me. It just wasn't matching my price. He said, all right, well, we just won't do it. And I said, okay. And that was it. And then a couple weeks later, he called me about another job. And that's when I had an epiphany. The other times where people stopped dealing with me because I stood firm on my pricing, not necessarily because they didn't want to be cool anymore. The big piece of it is, why would they call me if my pricing isn't where they need it to be and they're trying to stabilize the content for their business? The biggest piece of that for me was, it's okay if we don't meet eye to eye on pricing. Which brings me into the first way for you to not be underpaid is to refuse to be underpaid. Quote your price, stand on it, and smile. I have been in situations where I felt like lowering the price just because I quoted it and the phone got silent, or I quoted it and the person was like, dang. Smile, stand on that quote. You'll find out that they'll either hire you or they won't hire you and go find someone else. If they don't hire you and go find someone else, that means that they didn't need you for the job. They just wanted you for the job. And as a business, I'm interested in people who need or heavily prefer me versus want, because that's how I get paid the prices that I charge. The next thing that I want to share with you is trusting the process. If you think about anything that you do, there's a process that you go through when you're doing it. In your mind, you do things in the same order every time. I started recording videos like this one on Instagram Live. I would write down all of the things that I was going to talk about and I would just start talking. Before I started doing this, I would have one or two people peek in and out of the room, but most of the time it would be me and one person that's sticking through the entire Instagram live. I was going live like every day, and I realized there were 6 or 7 and 8 people in the room. Even though I'm talking and I'm going through my list of stuff that I'm saying, I'm really excited about all of these people that are in the room. But then I read a book that taught me a framework in storytelling. When I used that framework on the very next Instagram live, I felt super uncomfortable. I felt like I was sweating. I felt like my topics weren't good. I felt like everything that I was doing was just not good, messed up. Those 1, 2, or 3 people that would peek in and out of my old Instagram lives that had risen to 7 and 8 people sticking around for a long time in my most recent Instagram lives turned back into 1 or 2 people peeking out of it. I finished that live feeling like, oh my goodness, I have to practice on this new framework when the old one seems like it was doing great. I called some people and text some people that I saw jump in and out and like, how was the live? How was the live? And they were like, it was great. It was great. It was great. But I didn't believe that because they didn't stay. And then finally I talked to someone that I trust. They said, Ryan, that was a really, really good live. I said to myself, what? I was nervous because I was following a process that I wasn't used to following. It didn't mean that the process didn't work. In fact, it worked better than me doing it, winging it. The second thing that I noticed was that the fact that I felt the way that I felt, because I followed the process, my emotions didn't matter. It didn't affect anything. And so how that translates to us no longer being underpaid as videographers is writing down and following processes, because how we feel is a big part of what we do. If certain things cannot be affected by our emotion, such as how we talk to a client, how we deal with people in general on our team, if those things are handled a certain way every time, if we just default to it, it doesn't matter how we feel. No one will be able to tell that you feel a little bit offended that the client asked you to come down on your pricing. They just think you're doing business like you're supposed to do business. And the reason why this will no longer have you underpaid is because out of 100 videographers, 98 or 99 of them do not operate professionally. What's the difference between an unprofessional videographer and me? I have a process for everything so that I can maintain stability from my client's perspective, because I have feelings and emotions as well, and being a young entrepreneur isn't easy. The last point that I'll tell you is keep your boundaries, but be flexible. I had a client before who was hiring me and my team to travel to do an event. Sent the contract and everything. It hadn't been signed. It hadn't been paid. We didn't buy any tickets until the client paid. And so every day the tickets got more and more expensive. Personally, I don't like to quote a price to anyone and have to come back and say, hey, the price just went up. Hey, the price just went up. I have a responsibility to the client and to my company. I have to be fair to both of them. That's a boundary. Where the flexibility comes in at is communicating to the client. Hey, the prices are going up, so when you're ready to pay, let me know, and then I'll update it, and then we can go through that way. Update everything so that you can be back in a position where you're able to serve at your highest level, because that's what's most important when working with the clients. So to sum up the video, name your price, smile, and stand on it. Fall in love with the process. If there's anything that you have to do dealing with a client, create a process for it. That way you can follow that checklist every time. And the last thing is maintain your boundaries, but be flexible by using communication and updating any documentation that's required for you to be able to do your best job. Hope this was helpful. I love y'all.